Hi students, today we're doing lesson 10.2, simplifying radicals. And this is a little bit of a puzzle type game, kind of like the factoring one was. Maybe a little bit easier than factoring though. Okay, so we're gonna simplify this, but you need to know one thing before we start is when you have, let's say, x times y to the nth root of x times y, you can also write it as the nth root of x times the nth root of y. Okay, so you're going to need to know that on some of the problems so that you understand what we're doing. So you can always, if your problem looks like this, it means you can split it up into x and y multiplied separately. Okay, so let's do some examples to show you what I'm talking about. Let's go example 1. Says simplify the square root of 24. So there's going to be some that are more simple than other ones. So I'm going to call this one a simple one that you can do in your head. So what I'm going to do in my head is think, do I know any square roots that are a factor of 24? So think of factors of 24. You don't have to list all of them. I'm going to list them real quick just so that you know what I'm talking about. So 24 and 1, 12 and 2. Let's see, 24. That's going to be 8 and 3 and 6 and 4, right? Okay, so those are all the factors of 24. The factors are numbers that can be multiplied to get that number. So when I look at these numbers, I see a square in these numbers, and that's the 4. Okay? So in my head, I'm not doing all this on paper except to show y'all. This is what's going on in my head. So I want you to see what's going on in my head. I'm thinking of all the things that multiplied to make 24, right? And then I'm trying to find the one that has a square in it. So 4 is a square, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to change it to the square root of 4 times the square root of 6, right? Because of what I showed you up here. It's telling me that I can split this number up into 2 square roots. It's the same thing, okay? So now I'm going to go under this new it. Now I know the square root of 4 is 2, and we can't find the square root of 6. So we're going to leave it there. So that's my answer. 2 times the square root of 6. That is simplifying the square root of 24. Okay, so that's what we just did. We simplified the square root of 24, and we got 2 times the square root of 6. Okay, let's do another one so that you kind of get a hang of this. Okay, example 2. They want you to simplify. I'm not going to write simplify every time. I'm just going to probably do it on those first 2. Okay, the square root of 75. So 75 is a much bigger number than 24. And I'm going to show you a way to do really big numbers. But I still think 75 is pretty easy to do in your head. Because I know that 75 is 25 times 3, right? So if I do it like that, 25 times 3. Now some of y'all might not have known that. You might not have known 25 times 3 was 75. I think when I do 25s, I think in quarters. So when I see 75, I know that that's 3 quarters, right? So, like money-wise, right? That's what I'm talking about, like 25 cents, right? Quarters. So it's easy for me to do ones that are 25s because I know all the 25s from money. 25, 50, 75, 100. So that's the way I did this one quickly. Okay, so now that I know that 25 times 3 is 75, I can do the square root of 25, which is 5, and then the square root of 3 does not change because it doesn't have a square in it. It has to have a square in it for you to simplify it, right? So there's my answer. So the square root of 75 is 5 times the square root of 3. Okay, the next one is on your own. I'm going to have you do example, we're going to call it 2B, okay? And I want you to simplify, I'm not writing that in here, but I want you to simplify the square root of 45. Okay, so I want you to hit pause. I want you to do what we just did up here, or try to do what we just did up here. You might need to go over to the side and write out different ones that make 45. Okay, I started a few for you. Keep going with it and see if you can find any squares. Okay, go ahead and hit pause and do that now. Okay, now that you're back, after you figured out all your 45s, here's all the numbers, right, that make 45. I see one square in there, and that's the 9. So we're going to do 9 times 5. Square root of 9 times square root of 5. And now I can find the square root of 9 is 3, and then I just leave the square root of 5 like that. So there's my answer. The square root of 45 is 3 times the square root of 5. This is the simplified version, okay? This is called simplifying the square root. You want to get out anything that's a square out of there, and this is how we do it, okay? Okay, now let's go on to a little bit harder one. That's example 3, and this is a cube root. So we're going to simplify the cube root of 40. Okay, so cube roots, now what I'm looking for is cube roots, and you need to know your cube roots. So your cube roots are like, usually you just need to know the first couple because they don't usually make it too big. And when they are bigger, I'll show you how to handle those in just a minute. Okay, so 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 27, and 4 cubed is going to be way bigger than that. So we don't really need to even, I think it's 64. So that's bigger than 40, so we don't need to know that. So right away I can see that 8 is 1 because 40 is 8 times 5, right? So I have the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 5. And my cube root of 8 is going to be 2, right? Right there. And then I leave that last part there because I can't simplify that. So this is my answer for the cube root of 40 is going to be 2 times the cube root of 5. If I'm going too fast, then you need to, you can hit pause or just rewind it and listen to the example again. And then rewind it and listen to the example again. Okay, so now I'm going to go to example 4. We have quite a few examples on, We have quite a few examples. Well, we have 8 examples. And some of them I'm going to have even more than that because I'm going to have you do a few on your own. Okay, so example 4 is very different. I'm going to show you a different way to do this. So if you're not understanding what we're doing up there, you can do it this way. And the other reason to do it this way is if you have big numbers. So this one is going to be the cube root of 648. Okay, so you don't want to write down all the factors for 648. That would take you a long time. So instead, we're going to make a factor tree. We did factor trees a long time ago. Hopefully you remember how to do it. Okay, so I'm going to do 648. In a minute, we're going to do one with factor ladder, which we talked about a long time ago too. Okay, so 648, I can see that that's an even number, so I know that I can divide by 2. So that's going to be 3, 2, 4. Okay, remember on factor trees, we circle our prime numbers, and then we just keep going with the other ones that aren't prime. So this is again an even number, so I'm going to do 2 again, and that's going to be 162. Another even number, so that's going to be 2 and 81. Okay, 81 is not a prime number, so it's not good. Even number, sorry. So I can't pick 2 again. So I'm going to do 9 and 9. Those are not prime, so I'm not finished. On each one of those, that's 3 times 3. And those are prime, so now we're done. Okay, now what I want you to look at is all these numbers I wrote down. I'm going to put them all under the same cube root. So instead of writing 648, I'm going to write 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Okay, now because we're doing cube root, that means that I need to pull out 3 of each one. So I have 3 2s, and I have 4 3s, but I'm only going to take out 3 of them. Okay, so that means I'm going to have a 2 and a 3 come out, and that's going to be 6, right? 2 times 3. And what I have left is the cube root of 3. Okay, I'm going to show you another way to do this in just a minute, but I want you to see what I did here. So the 6 is the 2 times 3 because I'm only taking out 1 outside of the cube root because it's a root, right? So this is my answer. Now let me show you another way to do it. Same thing if I did a factor tree, but maybe some of y'all might like this way better. Okay, I did this factor tree, right? And then I'm going to write them as exponents. So that's 2 to the 3rd power times 3 to the 4th power. Okay, so instead of writing them all like this, I wrote them as exponents. So now, because I have 2 cubed, and I'm finding the cube root of that, then this one's going to be 2. And then when I have this 3 to the 4th power, I'm going to take out 3 of those, but it's really just taking out the 1, right? And then I leave in what's left over, and that's one of them. So I took out 3 here, which it's only 1 when it comes out of the square root or out of the cube root. And then I need to multiply those. So see, I got the same answer for both of these. I just did them a different way. One of them I wrote them all out. You might like it better that way. And one of them I did it with exponents. Okay, let's do that again because I know it's hard to get the first time. Let's do example 5. And this one we're going to do with a ladder. Okay, so this one is the 5th root of 14,580. Okay, that's a big one, but it goes pretty fast with the ladder. So let's do a ladder. If y'all don't remember, you're going to remember in just a minute. Actually, I forgot. I think I do my ladders. I think I showed you my ladders differently. Okay, I like to do from the bottom up. In the book, they do it the opposite way. Okay, so I'm going to divide by 2, and that gives me 7,290. And then I'm going to divide by 2 again because it's still even. So that gives me 3, 6, 4, 5. Okay, it's not even anymore, so I can't divide by 2 again. But it ends in a 5, so I'm going to divide by 5. So 5 goes into that 7, 2, 9. I think that's right. Yes. Okay, and then that almost looks like it's a prime number. 729 looks like that can't be divided by anything. So I know it's not a 2, but I'm going to check 3. Can it be divided by 3? And it can. It's going to be a 2, 4, 3. That can be divided by 3, which is 81. That can be divided by 3. Which is 81 divided by 3 is 227. That can be divided by 3, which is 9. And that can be divided by 3, which is 3. So I have all of these numbers, including that 3 at the top. Don't leave that one out. So I'm going to write it. I'm going to write them all out first, and I'm going to put them in order. 2 times 2 times, how many 3s do I have? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I have the 5, which was right here, right? Okay, so since it's a 5th root, I'm looking for 5 of something. You don't want to do any of the other ones. You want to only pick the one with 5 of something. So that's the 3. So if I have 5 of that, I'm only pulling one of them out. Okay, and then don't forget to write that little 5 up there. And then everything inside just gets multiplied back together. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 5 is 20. And that's my answer. So maybe if this is confusing you, some of y'all it's not, you can just move past that. Think about it like this. If I have the square root of 16, that is the same thing as the square root of 4 times 4, right? So my answer is just 4 because I only take out one of these when I'm doing the square root. So when I have the 5th root over here, right, when I have the 5th root, I'm circling 5 of these. Just like over here, I circled 2 of the 4s. So I'm circling 5 of these 3s, and I'm only taking one of them out, right? But when I take out one, that all of them are out from underneath the radical sign. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, now I want you to try one of these on your own. So this one's going to be example 5B. And I want you to do the cube root of 135. Okay, so this, you can make a factor tree or a ladder. That's what I prefer you to do on this one. Okay, so go ahead and try that on your own. Okay, now that you're back, I'm going to go ahead and do a factor tree on it. I normally like factor trees when they're not huge numbers. When they get to be really big numbers, then I usually like the ladder. Okay, so 135, that can be divided by 3. So I'm going to get 45. 45 can be 9 times 5. Hold on, I need to circle my primes here. And then 9 is 3 and 3. Okay, so now over here, I'm going to write those in order. Some kids like to do it with the exponents, and that's fine. I just normally like to do it this way to show y'all that I actually have 3 of these that I'm going to pull out. And then the 5 is going to stay in there. And don't forget the little 3 there, or you're going to get it wrong. So you should have gotten the answer 3 times the cube root of 5. Okay, now let's get into some algebra and do some variables. Okay, so we're going to have the square root of 32x to the 3rd power y squared. Okay, so a couple of ways I can do this, but I'm going to do it again with a factor tree just to show you because, no, let's not do the factor tree. Because 32 is a small enough number. And I'm doing square root. So I'm going to find a number that's a square for this. Okay, so I'm going to do 16 times 2. That gives me 32, right? And then I'm going to write out all of the x's and all of the y's. And I'm going to show you why in just a minute. So I could have done the 16 times 2. I could have done 32 and done a factor tree. And I would have gotten a whole bunch of 2's. Okay, so this is what I would have gotten. So I would have had 5 2's. Okay, so I'll show you that way in a minute also. Okay, so doing it this way right here, the square root of 16 is 4. So that's going to be on the outside, right? I'm going to leave some space because I'm going to have more on the outside also. The 2 is going to stay inside because I can't find the square root of that. And now I'm going to circle all 2's of everything. So there's 2 x's and there's 2 y's. Okay, so now that means I'm going to take 1 x out and 1 y out. And what's left over? The x. So here's my answer. Now, if I were to do it this way, let me show you how that would have looked. I'm still going to get the same answer no matter which way I do it. That's the nice thing about math, is you're always going to get the same answer. Okay, so if I have 5 2's, and then I have the 3 x's and the 2 y's, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle 2's of everything. So there's 2 2's, there's another 2 x's, and 2 y's. So everything that did not get circled is going to stay inside the square root sign. So that's going to be the 2 and the x, right? So that's this and this. And then on the outside is going to be all the things that are in circles multiplied by each other. So here I have a 2 and a 2, so that's going to be a 4, and then I have an x and a y. You see, I got the same thing. I just did it a different way. Okay, so let's see if you can actually, I'll wait on the example for the last part. Okay, so example 7. I don't know if you have any of these in your homework, but I'm just going to show you real quick what it looks like. It says to simplify the square root of x plus 2 squared. So that's easy enough, right? Let's pretend like I had the square root of 8 squared. The answer would be 8. I'm sorry, without that square root sign there. So the square root of 8 squared, the answer would be 8. So it's the same thing here. I have this squared, so the answer is x plus 2. Okay? So example 7 is super easy. If you have something squared and you're doing the square root of it, the answer is just that number. Okay, last one that I'm doing with you, and then you're going to do the very last one by yourself. Okay, example 8 is the cube root the cube root of 16x squared y to the 4th z to the 6th power. Okay, so let's do this the circling way, the way that I did it where we circled things, right? Okay, so if I were to write out all of 16, if I were doing a tree, I would have 4 times 4, and then 2 times 2, and 2 times 2. So I have 4 2's there, right? Okay, so I'm going to write those all out. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. That's my 16. And I have x times x. I have y times y times y times y. And then I have a whole bunch of z's. Z, 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 z. Okay, lots of, those are z's, not 2's. My 2's and my z's look pretty close to each other. You have to be careful there. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle everything in 3's. So here's 3 2's. Notice there's a 2 left over. My x's, I don't have 3 of, so I can't circle them. I have 3 y's, and I have leftover y. And then I have 3 z's and another 3 z's. Okay, so now looking at all the things I just circled, that's what you're going to pull out. And I'm going to have a 2, a y. Okay, so I just did this one, the y's. And then I have 2 different z's. So this is going to be z squared because I have 2 of them. Okay, and then inside the cube root, I'm going to have what's left over, what I didn't circle. And that's going to be 2x squared y. Okay, so it's all the things I underlined. So here's my 2x squared and my y. And that's my answer. It looks pretty big, but it's really simple to do. Okay, so now you're going to do one, example 8b on your own. Okay, so this one's on your own. That's what OYO means. And this one's going to be the square root of 588x cubed y squared. Okay, so do that one on your own and then come back to the video. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to do 588, and I'm going to actually do it with a ladder just to show you something different. Okay, so that's going to be squared. Let's see, this would be 294. I can square that. I can divide by 2 again. That's going to be 147. Okay, that one cannot be divided by 2, but it can be divided by 3. That's going to be 49. And then 49 is 7 times 7. Okay, so now when I write all my numbers, make sure you include that top number. I'm going to have 2 times 2 times 3 times 7 times 7. Then I'm going to do my variables, x times x times x times y times y. Okay, I'm going to circle everything that are 2's because this is a square root. There's a 2 out there even though you don't see it. Okay, so there's 2 of those. I don't have 2 3's. There's 2 of those. 2 x's and 2 y's. So on the outside of your square root, you should have had 14 because 2 times 7, right? So we did those 2. And then you should have had an x and a y. So we did these 2. And then inside the square root, you should have a 3 and an x because that's what I had underlined right here and here. And that should have been your answer. Okay, that's it for today's assignment or lesson.